Welcome to the Wife Stories YouTube channel. New video every day, and don't forget to subscribe. Here we go.
"It's not your business," she said. The words felt like a slap, but what struck me even deeper was the faint bruise on her neck, an oval of discolored skin, as if someone had sunk their teeth there in some private, hungry moment. I froze. That small mark could have been anything. Maybe she bumped into something. Maybe it was just a strange rash. But I'd seen enough in my 42 years to recognize the shape of a lover's claim. A man knows when another man has been near his wife. For a long while, I just stood there, staring, unable to come up with a reply. My heart thumped so loud I couldn't tell if I was breathing right, and an acid burn crawled up my throat. She rubbed at her neck with the back of her hand, trying to conceal the mark or dismiss it as nothing. She repeated, "It's not your business," but her voice trembled at the edges. I should have said something. Anything. But all I managed was silence. That silence curled around me, thickening, clogging my thoughts. I felt my mind sliding into a dull roar of anger, confusion, and humiliation. We had 2 kids down the hall, the dog on the porch, the life we built in our big house with the white fence, the 2-car garage, the evenings with the neighbors. It was all so perfect on the outside. Perfect. Until now. I saw how her fingers trembled. No matter what shield she threw up, part of her was scared. And maybe part of her wanted me to find out, to do something. Isn't that why people leave traces? Isn't that why they don't cover up perfectly? My thoughts whirled. I was cornered. And so was she. And yet, I couldn't manage any words. Not a one. I stared at that bite mark, or bruise, or whatever it was, and my mind twisted in loops. That night, I said nothing more. I wandered away, called it an early bedtime, and holed up in my workroom under the pretense of finishing a project. But in truth, I sat there in the dark, turning a pen between my fingers until I couldn't feel them. My chest felt like a furnace door left open. I tried to breathe. The taste of betrayal has a flavor, metallic, bitter, impossible to wash out. I didn't know if I had the strength to bring it into the open. I kept hearing her last words. "It's not your business." I guess it wasn't, if my role was just to bring home a paycheck and smile for family pictures. I didn't confront her the next morning. I got ready for work before she woke. I took a shower, dried off, dressed in a crisp shirt and tie. Looked in the mirror. There's something about seeing your own reflection when you're stewing in anger. You almost don't recognize the man staring back. I had a decent face, a bit of gray at the temples, a strong jaw, a steady gaze. But that morning my eyes looked shadowed and distant, as though I were checking out. The dog, Bobo, scraped at the door, whining, wanting in, wanting out. I couldn't tell. The whining got on my nerves. Too much noise when I needed quiet. After the usual commute, I arrived at the office, flipped on the fluorescent lights, booted up my computer, tried to bury myself in budgets and spreadsheets. I was a department head now, a job I'd fought for over years of loyal service. My team respected me, or pretended to. I had a corner office, yet I found no pride in that. I was on autopilot, going through each meeting, each phone call, nodding, replying with monotone courtesy. "Sure. Yes, we can do that by the deadline. We'll circle back. Let's put a pin in it." Corporate catchphrases to keep the day turning. But inside I was boiling. I remember gripping my pen so tightly in a strategy meeting that the plastic snapped. A few colleagues glanced my way, but I held a neutral expression. They asked if I was all right. I said yes, but my voice sounded robotic. When the lunch break came, I stayed at my desk, pretending I had more work than time. I didn't want to socialize. Didn't want to chat about football or the weather, not while my marriage might be rotting from the inside out. All day, I replayed her words. "It's not your business." My mind repeated them, over and over, until they became background noise, like a broken record. By the time I drove home, I felt a headache building behind my temples. but I forced myself to put on my husband face as I walked through the door. The kids ran up, hugging me around the waist, babbling about their day. There was safety in that routine, in the small arms wrapped around me. My wife, Sarah, offered me a tense smile. She acted normal, as though we had some silent agreement to pretend everything was still fine. That might have been the end of it, if not for Bobo. Late that evening, the dog started barking like a maniac. He scratched the floor beneath our bed, snarling and fussing. I tried to pull him away, thinking maybe we had mice or a rat. As I bent down, rummaging through the dust and random old boxes, my fingers brushed against a crumpled wrapper, a condom wrapper. The brand was definitely not something I used. I hadn't needed condoms for 3 years, ever since my vasectomy. My pulse hammered. I remember the edges of that foil scraping my thumb, as if mocking me. My dog had discovered what I was too blind to see. Sarah stood in the doorway, her face bleached of color. In that split second, I saw the panic. She wanted to say something, maybe to deny or explain. I looked at her, held up the wrapper between 2 fingers like a piece of evidence. Then I set it on the dresser. I didn't scream or accuse. All I managed was an empty, right. Then I grabbed my jacket and left the house. I drove aimlessly for hours that night with no music, no radio, just the hum of the car engine and my own thoughts. "It's not your business," she'd said, but it was. My family was my business. My marriage was my business. The life I'd built, brick by brick, day by day, was my business. I must have circled the highway loops around Dallas 6 times. Finally, past midnight, I returned. The house was dark. I went straight to the guest room, locked the door, and lay there, wide awake, my body rigid with anger. I felt physically hot, like my skin was on fire. My mind kept drifting to the mark on her neck, the wrapper, the fear in her eyes. My heart hammered so loud I thought it might burst. The next few days were a blur of forced politeness. She tried to explain that a friend, Oliver, had come by, that they'd had a few drinks, that it was a stupid mistake. She swore it was only once. She started to cry, to reach for my hand. I pulled back. I stared at her with a face as cold and blank as I could manage, because if I let my emotions out right then, I knew I'd break something, or break myself. The kids were in the other room. The dog was barking. The phone kept ringing. Life marched on, the daily illusions of normalcy. I gave her a curt, "We'll discuss it later," and that was it. In the days that followed, I poured myself into my job. Extra hours, weekend commitments, late-night phone conferences. I accepted every new project. I became the boss who never says no to upper management. My coworkers noticed the shift. My drive turned into a grinding obsession. I wanted to outrun my personal life with spreadsheets and deadlines. Because whenever I came home to that big, quiet house, I felt the walls pressing in. The living room where we used to watch movies, the kitchen where we ate dinner as a family, the bedroom we once shared, every place was tainted with the knowledge that she'd let another man in. I told myself I'd wait for the next slip-up. If this Oliver, her family friend, as she called him, was truly her lover, he'd eventually return. I could sense it in her eyes, guilt, restlessness, and an undercurrent of defiance. She tried to be extra nice, offering me coffee in the mornings, texting me sweet nothings during the day, as if that could fix the gaping wound. Each time my phone buzzed, and I saw her name, my stomach twisted. I'd read her messages without replying, letting them pile up. My silence was a punishment, though I wasn't sure if it was aimed more at her or at myself. Days bowled into weeks. One Friday evening, she asked me if I'd be traveling for work soon. She tried to sound casual, but a tremor betrayed her. I said, "Yes, next week." She nodded, too quickly, and busied herself with the dishes. A flicker of satisfaction, or maybe relief, crossed her face. I pretended not to notice. Instead, I quietly canceled the trip. Told the office I had a family emergency. I wanted to be here, just out of sight. On the night I was supposed to leave, I pretended to drive off. Instead, I parked around the corner and walked back through the side gate, letting myself in with the spare key to the garage. I slipped in quietly, dragging a small duffel bag behind me, like a soldier returning to enemy territory. The house lights were dimmed. The kids were at their grandmother's. Sarah had told me she was taking them to see a movie, then letting them stay overnight at her mom's place. Another arrangement, so convenient. Bobo recognized me, but I hushed him with a gentle pat. I crept into the storage closet near the kitchen. The air smelled like cleaning supplies and the lingering scent of mothballs. The door was cracked just enough for me to glimpse the living room. I waited, forcing my breathing to slow. My heart thundered, adrenaline pulsing in my veins. All the while, I asked myself if I really wanted to see it, if I wanted to watch her with him. But I had to. Some savage part of me needed proof. An animal instinct roared inside. Let me see it so I can know the truth. Let me see it so I have no doubts. I heard the front door open. Footsteps. Male voice. Sarah. She greeted him softly, too softly. My fingers tensed on the doorframe. He sounded confident, playful. I recognized that tone. The tone of a man who believes he's welcome. She whispered something I couldn't make out, and they laughed in unison. The laugh cut through me like a blade. Then they moved into the living room, right in my line of sight. Oliver looked just like I imagined. Lean, smirking, neatly dressed in a casual button-down. And she wore a short dress I'd never seen before, something that clung to her waist and highlighted her legs. She'd done her hair up, wearing red lipstick that I thought she reserved for special occasions. They kissed without hesitation, the kind of kiss that belongs behind locked doors, stolen from another man. I felt my stomach spasm, my throat turn raw. He ran his hands along her sides, whispered something in her ear, and she blushed. Blushed the way she used to for me. I felt a wave of heat rush to my head. My jaw clenched so tight my teeth ached. I wanted to erupt from that closet and tear him apart. But I didn't move yet. I stayed rooted, every cell in my body vibrating with rage and shame. It's not your business, she'd said. But I was seeing them together, right there, in my living room, where our kids played, where our family photos hung on the wall. She tugged him onto the couch. They sank into the cushions, locked in an embrace that left no doubt. There was touching, breathless murmuring, the soft rustle of clothes. I couldn't watch more than a few seconds. I shut my eyes, pressed my fist to my mouth to stifle a roar of pure hatred. My mind spun. This was real. This was happening. My wife. This man. In my house. On my couch. My body trembled. My chest felt so tight I thought I might pass out. A single minute stretched like a lifetime. I could still hear them. The hush of skin against skin, low moans. It made me sick. It fueled me. I discovered a new dimension of fury, something deeper than I ever thought possible. All illusions dropped away. All those hashtags, #blessed, #family first, the perfect social media photos. They were nothing but a facade now. I was living in a world built on rotting timbers. I waited until I heard a lull in their whispers, some lazy moment where they paused to catch their breath. Then I opened the closet door, 1 inch at a time, and stepped out. My legs felt mechanical, as if they moved on their own. My mind was singularly focused. I was done hiding. Sarah spotted me first. Her eyes widened, and she jolted up, fumbling with the hem of her dress. Oliver turned, half confused, half alarmed. He blurted out a stuttered, "What the?" I stared at them, my face a rigid mask. My voice came out steady, controlled. I was supposed to be on a business trip. He stood and backed up a step. "Hey man, this isn't what it looks like." I let out a short, bitter laugh that sounded more like a cough. "No, because from here, it looks exactly like adultery." Sarah jumped up from the couch, face burning red. She tried to speak. It just happened. I cut her off. Don't lie. My tone was final, like a judge pronouncing a sentence. Oliver swallowed. He spread his hands, like he wanted to calm me down. Listen, buddy, we're both adults. You can't just barge in here. This is my house, I said. And my wife. The last word felt hollow, but I said it anyway. But I guess you knew that. Sarah touched his arm, as if seeking reassurance, or maybe she was just trembling and grabbed the first thing she could. He looked at her, then back at me, confusion turning to wariness. All right, man, I'm not looking for trouble. Let's just talk this out. I stood there in a wave of raw energy, fists clenched at my sides. The space around us crackled with tension. Then he made a mistake. He stepped forward to approach me, maybe to reason with me, maybe to show he wasn't afraid. In that moment, everything snapped. My voice turned low and sharp. Stay right where you are. But he kept coming. My world narrowed to him, his movement, the half-arrogant tilt of his shoulders. He glanced back at Sarah, seeking her permission or her support. Calling me crazy, perhaps. I saw red. Before I knew it, I'd crossed the distance. My arm whipped out, hitting him square in the face. Just once. Hard and precise. Years of pent-up frustration. Betrayal. Heartbreak unleashed in a single blow. He didn't even get to put up his arms. The crack of impact reverberated, echoing in the living room. For a breathless second, he stood there, eyes rolling back, and then he collapsed to the carpet with a dull thud. Sarah screamed, a high, piercing shriek that tore at the air. I stared at Oliver's crumpled body, the ragged angle of his limbs. My hand throbbed, but the pain felt distant. He didn't move. The hush that followed was almost worse than the screaming. I knelt, pressed my fingers to his neck, searching for a pulse. Nothing. My breath caught in my throat. I could see the stillness in his chest. Sarah dropped to her knees beside him, her hands fluttering over his shoulders, searching for signs of life. She sobbed, tears streaming. She tried to shake him awake, all while cursing at me, calling me a monster, a psycho. My heart hammered, but I didn't feel any regret in that moment, only a deep, cold emptiness, like I had become someone else, someone unstoppable. This man was sleeping with my wife in my house. I'd said to stay back. He didn't listen. Everything moved in slow motion. She looked up at me, eyes wild, face streaked with tears. Call an ambulance. She screamed. I stared, numb. The dog barked outside, scraping at the door. The overhead light flickered, as if about to die. For a moment, I was caught in a trance, just observing the wreckage. Finally, I stood, walked away, ignoring her sobbing demands for help. Maybe I was in shock, or maybe I just didn't care if he lived or died. My mind was like a steel trap, locked down on one fact. He had violated my home, and she had allowed it. Let them reap the consequences. I went to the kids' room, grabbed a duffel bag, stuffed some clothes in. I was calm, methodical. The chaos behind me, her cries, the limp body on the carpet, felt oddly distant. I called my mother-in-law, voice steady as a judge's verdict. I'm bringing the kids over. I told her we needed a break from the house, that Sarah wanted them to stay a few days. She asked if everything was okay. I lied. Yes, everything's fine. Then I hung up. I packed the children's essentials, ignoring Sarah's frantic wails. She ran after me when I stepped into the hallway. Her face was blotchy, her hair tangled, eyes swollen. You can't just leave him there, she shrieked, pointing toward the living room. I turned to face her. My voice came out low and cold, each word clipped. I told him to back off. He didn't. She tried to slap me, but I caught her wrist. We were inches apart, breathing each other's air. I felt her trembling. For a moment, I thought about the day we got married. How she'd smiled. How her laughter had filled the church. That was another life. Another me. Now, her voice was raw with hate. What are you? She hissed. You're a murderer. Our children. I'm their father. I cut in. And I protect what's mine. The hollowness in my voice scared even me. I let go of her wrist. She stumbled back, tears brimming again. But I offered no comfort. She followed me out to the driveway, still screaming. I opened the backseat door, strapped in the children, who were staying at her mother's that night, but had left some things behind. My mind was on autopilot, ensuring they'd have enough supplies. Strange how fatherhood instincts can remain intact, even when everything else is scorched to ashes. I slid into the driver's seat and started the engine. She banged on the window, her face twisted in agony, mouthing words I couldn't make out over the roar in my ears. The glare of the streetlights sliced through the windshield, illuminating her tear-streaked face. My stomach churned. Then I reversed down the driveway, pulling away. She stood there, arms raised, cursing me with a shattered voice. The roads at night were deserted. I drove carefully, telling myself to keep it slow and steady. For the kids' sake. They were dozing in the back, lulled by the motion, oblivious to what had just happened in that living room. My chest tightened with the weight of it all. Part of me wanted to cry. Part of me wanted to scream. Part of me wanted to set the entire world on fire. But men don't cry, do they? That's what I'd always been told. So I swallowed it down, let it burn silently inside. I delivered them to my mother-in-law's place. She had questions, but I spoke in short, deliberate sentences, as if I were in court. Sarah's not feeling well. They'll stay here a few nights. My tone left no room for debate. She eyed me with concern, maybe suspecting something was off. But she also saw the look on my face, that cold finality. She nodded, not asking more. The children hardly woke. I kissed them each on the forehead and whispered, "I love you. I'll see you soon." It struck me then how easy it is to destroy a family. One mistake, one moment of betrayal, and everything collapses like a house of cards. My mother-in-law must have felt the tension, but she just stepped aside, letting me leave without protest. Outside, the warm Texan night weighed on my shoulders like an invisible burden. I leaned against my car for a moment, looking up at the stars. The emptiness of the sky reflected the emptiness in my chest. Then I drove back, not sure if I'd find flashing sirens or police tape, not sure if Sarah would be there, or if she'd run. A numb acceptance gripped me. The life I knew was over. There was no going back to the illusions. If the cops arrested me, so be it. If she tried to blame me, so be it. There was a calm that comes with hitting rock bottom. When I arrived, everything was quiet. The lights were off except for one lamp in the living room. My footfalls on the porch felt unreal, as if I were drifting through someone else's dream. Pushing open the door, I found her hunched over the coffee table, phone in hand. Her eyes flicked up. Her face was pale, tear-streaked. I expected shouts or accusations, but she just stared with a hollow gaze. "He's gone," she said in a raspy tone. I called an ambulance, but she shook her head. The sorrow in her eyes was genuine, heartbreakingly so. They tried, but he was gone. And the cops came. My breath caught. "Where are they now?" I asked flatly. "They left. I told them he'd shown up drunk, that he tried to force himself, that you defended me." Her voice cracked. "They asked me if I wanted you arrested. I said no, that it was self-defense. They took his body away." Her shoulders sagged. "I told them you took the kids to my mom's for safety. I absorbed that." A swirl of confusion and suspicion. "Why cover for me?" I asked at last. She let out a shaky breath. "Because my children need a father, and because I can't bear the scandal." A bitter laugh escaped her lips. "Maybe that makes me a coward, but I did what I did." A long, terrible silence followed. My gaze wandered to the couch where he'd died, the stain on the carpet where his blood or sweat or tears might have soaked in. I felt no triumph, no relief, only an ache that spread through my bones. "Where does that leave us?" I finally asked, my voice hollow. She looked at me, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I don't know," she whispered. I only know that everything has changed. I made no reply, couldn't even manage a nod. I turned away from her, walked to the kitchen. The overhead light was harsh, fluorescent, revealing every crack and stain. I opened a cabinet, took out a glass, and poured myself water. My throat was so dry it felt like sandpaper. I felt her presence behind me, silent. Maybe she thought I'd lash out, or maybe she hoped I'd comfort her. I did neither. My hand shook as I lifted the glass to my lips. The tension in the room coiled around us like a serpent. At length, I asked, "Does your mother know?" She shook her head. "No." I told her something else. Just said there was an incident, but the police handled it. I swallowed. "What now?" She pressed her lips together. "We say nothing. The police believe the story. There's evidence to back it up. I told them Oliver tried to assault me. You stepped in to defend me. No one can prove otherwise." Bitterness rose in my throat. Ironic, isn't it? She closed her eyes, tears escaping again. I gripped the edge of the counter, trying to keep myself from snapping. She had lied to the authorities. Maybe out of fear or self-preservation, or out of some twisted sense of loyalty. Ironic indeed. But a small part of me felt relief. I had no desire to go to prison. I was never the type to volunteer for martyrdom. Yet the guilt pressed down on me like a weight. I walked back to the living room, scanning the place where his body had lain. My mind replayed the moment of impact, the crack of my knuckles against his jaw. The sound was still lodged in my memory. Sarah followed at a distance, arms wrapped around herself. The entire house felt haunted. The illusions of a happy family gone. I slumped into an armchair. She hovered near the couch. "Do you hate me?" she asked, voice barely a whisper. I stared at a photo on the wall. Our wedding day. We looked so young, so in love. I didn't trust myself to speak for a long time. Then I said, "I don't know what I feel anymore. Hate, love, regret. Everything's tangled." She pressed her palms to her face and sobbed softly. I watched, expressionless, as though from a great distance. In that moment, I was neither husband nor avenger, just a hollow shell. I was so drained that tears wouldn't come. Men aren't supposed to cry, they say, but sometimes I wish I could have just broken down. Instead, I stared at my own reflection in the glass cabinet. The ghost of a man stared back, eyes dead. I spent the night in the armchair, half expecting the police to return. But no one came. The next morning, I loaded a few suitcases into my car. Didn't say much to Sarah. She lurked in the doorway, hair disheveled, gaze despairing. "Where are you going?" she asked, voice quivering. "Don't know yet," I replied. "I just need space. I'll pick up the kids from your mom's later. They're better off there for the moment." She sniffed, nodding. "Will you come back?" I paused, hand on the doorknob, not turning around. 1,000 retorts danced on my tongue. Finally, I settled on, "I don't know." Then I left. The weight of the ring on my finger felt stifling, a reminder of vows betrayed. I checked into a cheap motel off the highway. I sat on the lumpy bed, stared at the wood-paneled walls, the flickering TV. Hours passed like years. My phone buzzed with messages from coworkers, from my boss. I sent them short updates, taking some personal time. I replay the entire chain of events, from the day Bobo found that rapper to the punch that ended a life. Eventually, I realized I couldn't stay in that motel forever. I had a job, responsibilities, children. So I returned to the office after the weekend, burying my shame and anger in a veneer of professionalism. People asked if everything was okay at home. I delivered the same line. "Family emergency, but we're handling it." No more questions followed. I met the kids at their grandmother's after work. They leaped into my arms, not sensing the invisible cracks in me. For the first time since everything exploded, I felt something close to tears. I hugged them tight, inhaling their familiar scents, peanut butter and shampoo. They were my anchors. I realized I couldn't just vanish from their lives. but going back to the same house with the same woman who'd welcomed Oliver into our bed. That felt impossible. So, for a while, I made excuses. I told the kids we were renovating, or fixing a leak, so they had to stay with Grandma. I drifted between the motel and the office, lost in some purgatory of my own making. Sarah called me every day. At first, I ignored her calls. Then I sent a few texts, short responses. She asked if we could meet and talk, away from the children, away from that damned living room. One evening after my shift, I agreed to meet at a quiet cafe. She looked exhausted, no makeup, dark circles under her eyes, hair pulled into a limp ponytail. We sat in a booth, each with a coffee we barely sipped. She tried to apologize again, to explain. She said she'd been lonely, that I was always working, that she needed attention. She said Oliver took advantage of that. I listened with a stony face. Part of me wanted to roar. And what did I do to deserve this? But the words wouldn't form. Maybe I already knew the answer, or maybe it didn't matter. Nothing excused betrayal. Nothing excused letting him into our marriage. She admitted that she blamed me for pushing her away, but she also accepted responsibility. She spoke about how it started with flirting, how lines got blurred, how she convinced herself it was harmless. I let her speak. I let her cry. In the end, she reached across the table, wanting to hold my hand. I pulled away. I killed him, I said quietly. The words sat heavy between us. She gave a broken nod, tears trembling on her eyelashes. You did, she replied. But if you hadn't, maybe he would have lived to tear us apart another day. I leaned back, my gaze sweeping over the cafe's simple decor. We're already torn apart, I said. I don't know how to move forward. Her voice trembled, but there was a steely resolve underneath. We have to at least try. For the kids, for ourselves. Otherwise, everything is lost. I looked down at my coffee, swirling it in the cup. The steam had dissipated long ago, leaving a cold, bitter liquid. I'm not sure, I whispered. I'm not sure if I can forgive you, or myself. She reached for a napkin to dab her eyes. I don't expect forgiveness, she said, voice cracking. But I don't want to lie anymore. We can't live a lie. Silence weighed heavy, each of us trapped in our own regrets. Then I stood up, tossed some bills on the table. My mouth felt dry. I'll think about it. She stared at me, eyes pleading. But I turned and walked out. I had no blueprint for how to handle the aftermath of killing a man, or how to mend a marriage ravaged by infidelity. My life had become an alien landscape, bleak and uncertain. Over the following weeks, I drifted through each day like a ghost. Work felt like the only stable thing, ironically. At night, alone in my motel room, I'd catch my reflection in the mirror and wonder who I was. A man who was once proud of his integrity, who put his family first. Now I was a man with blood on his hands, harboring a nest of conflicting emotions, rage, sorrow, guilt, and a lingering sense of possession over a wife who'd given herself to someone else. My colleagues recognized a shift in me. My boss praised my performance, ironically, because I was pouring every ounce of my mental energy into tasks, as if to escape the moral meltdown in my private life. I earned another commendation, a raise. I nodded, thanked them, and went back to my silent war. Eventually, the weight of not seeing my children every day became unbearable. I started picking them up from school, taking them out for dinner. We'd talk, laugh a bit, do homework together in the public library. I forced a smile, forced normalcy. They were too young to understand the cracks forming in our family's foundation. I lied to them, telling them we were sorting some stuff out. They believed me in that innocent way kids do. At some point, I realized I had to move back. My daughter's birthday was nearing. I couldn't show up from a motel and pretend we were normal. So I steeled myself and drove home late one evening. The house was dark except for the porch light. I let myself in, found Sarah sitting at the kitchen table, hands clasped around a mug of tea. She looked up, her expression guarded hope. Without a word, I set down my bags. She nodded once, tears glimmering in her eyes. "The kids will be home tomorrow," she said. "They're at my mom's for the night." I nodded. "All right." Then I trudged up the stairs to the guest room. I couldn't bring myself to enter our old bedroom. It was too full of ghosts. I closed the door behind me, switched on the lamp, and collapsed onto the spare mattress. My mind churned, replaying the day I found the wrapper, the day I walked out, the night I discovered them on the couch. I wondered if I'd ever have a normal thought again. The next morning, I got up early, made coffee. We moved around each other in awkward silence, like strangers forced to share a space. Finally, I broke the quiet. "I'm not sure how long I'll stay in the guest room, but I'm here for the kids." She looked at me with a mixture of pain and understanding. "I know. One day at a time." That became our new mantra. Days turned into weeks. Life fell into a pattern. I was there, physically, but emotionally, I was absent, numb. She tried to talk, to apologize, to discuss therapy or counseling. I brushed her off with short, firm responses. "I'm not ready," or "we'll see." I avoided direct confrontation, because the rage still simmered under my skin. Now and then, I'd find myself standing in the living room, staring at the spot where Oliver fell. My fist would clench involuntarily. One night, Sarah walked in on me standing there. She placed a hand on my shoulder. "We could replace the carpet," she offered hesitantly. "Redo the furniture. Maybe that'll help." I shook her off. "Changing the carpet won't erase it," I said, a harsh edge to my voice. She nodded sadly, stepping away. The children, thankfully, remained oblivious. We kept up appearances for them. Family dinners, outings to the park, evenings with board games. But behind the scenes, I couldn't escape the memory. In my nightmares, I saw Oliver's face as he fell. I heard the sickening thud when his head hit the floor. Each time, I'd jolt awake, drenched in sweat, my pulse racing. Sometimes I'd creep downstairs, rummage through the liquor cabinet, swallow enough whiskey to dull my senses, and I'd remember the day we married, promising to stand by each other through sickness and health. Where did that promise go? Was it ever real? I felt like my entire life was built on illusions, like we'd been playing roles in some grand sham. I was the hard-working, dependable husband. She was the supportive wife. In reality, we'd let the distance grow, let resentment fester. She searched for excitement in another man's arms. I searched for validation in my career. At the office, I was unstoppable, a man possessed. The CEO took notice of my performance. There were murmurs of another promotion. I nodded along, feigning gratitude. Yet none of it touched the cold knot in my chest. My life outside the office was a wasteland of tension and half-buried guilt. One evening, Sarah tried to approach me again. The kids were asleep, the dishwasher hummed softly. I was in the backyard, leaning against the porch rail, smoking a cigarette. I'd quit years ago, but since the incident, I found myself lighting up in the evenings, the glow of the ember reflecting in the patio door. The swirl of smoke danced in the night air. She stepped beside me, arms folded. "I didn't know you started smoking again," she said quietly. I shrugged. "A lot of things changed," she sighed. A tense beat passed. "I miss the man you were," she said, voice trembling. "Not the man who ignores me, locks himself in the guest room, and glares at me like I'm a stranger." I exhaled a plume of smoke, watched it dissolve into the darkness. "That man died the night I found out what you were doing." The words came out in a flat monotone, but beneath them boiled so much anger, so much hurt. She bowed her head, tears slipping down her cheeks. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I really am. I know I can't take it back. But I can't live like this either." I dropped the cigarette, crushed it under my heel. "Then leave," I said. "Take the kids, go wherever you want. You made it very clear it was none of my business anyway." She flinched like I'd struck her. "I never wanted any of this," she whispered. "I was lonely. I was stupid. I turned on her, voice low and harsh. Stop. I don't want your reasons. I just want the truth. We both know. You were bored with me. You wanted a thrill. You got it. She covered her face, sobbing. I stared at her, torn between pity and fury. The night air felt heavy, thick with unspoken regrets. Then, in a calmer tone, I said, "Do you want me to go? Because I will. I'll let you have the house. I can't keep up this charade." She lowered her hands, eyes swollen. "No," she answered. "I don't want you to go. The kids need you. And I still love you, in some messed up way. I know that might not mean much to you now, but it's the truth." I laughed, a short, bitter sound. Funny way of showing love. She nodded, hugging herself. "I know, but that's all I have to hold on to right now." Her voice cracked again. "I lost your trust. I can't fix that overnight. But if you give me a chance, maybe we can find a way, even if it's just for them." I let the silence stretch, the only sound the distant chirping of crickets. Somewhere behind me, Bobo sniffed at the door, scratching to be let out. I looked up at the sky, at the faint shimmer of stars. Finally, I spoke, voice resigned. "I can stay, but don't expect miracles. I'm not sure if I'll ever be the same." She wiped her tears, managed a tiny nod. "I understand." We fell into a broken routine after that. I stayed in the guest room. She gave me space, tried not to push. Occasionally, she'd attempt to share a joke or a memory, trying to coax me back into normalcy. And sometimes, to my own surprise, I'd respond. We had fleeting moments where we laughed about some silly anecdote from the kids' day. But it was always followed by a tense hush, as if we both remembered the gulf between us. Weeks later, I came home from work, exhausted. The kids ran up, showing off their latest pictures from school. Sarah was in the kitchen, preparing dinner. For a strange moment, it all felt oddly peaceful, like the normal family life I once took for granted. I helped the kids with their homework, teased them about their sloppy handwriting. When dinner was ready, we sat around the table, making small talk. My anger had dulled to a simmer. After we tucked the kids in, I sat in the living room, flipping through the channels on TV. Sarah joined me, perched gingerly on the edge of a chair, as if waiting for permission to speak. She cleared her throat. "Your mom called today," she said. "She wants to come visit next month." I nodded, remote in hand. "All right." She hesitated, then said, "I think it'd be good. The kids miss her. And maybe it'd help to have family around." I wasn't sure how to respond. My mother and I had our own complicated history, but the kids did love her. And part of me realized that life doesn't stop just because I'm stuck in purgatory. I sighed. "Sure, she can stay in the guest room. I'll sleep on the couch." A small frown flickered across Sarah's face, but she nodded. "Okay." We lapsed into silence, the only sound the low hum of the TV. Eventually, I turned it off, and we sat in the darkness, the glow of the street lamp filtering through the curtains. She shifted, pressing her hands together. "Thank you," she said softly. "For what?" "For staying. For trying. I know it's not easy. You have every right to leave. But you're here." I let out a long breath. "Only because I don't want the kids' lives shattered any more than they already are." She nodded, eyes downcast. "That's enough of a reason for now." And so we continued, neither reconciled nor fully apart, bound by children and a history we couldn't erase. The nights were lonely, but the days grew bearable. I threw myself into fatherhood, into work. She tiptoed around me, always apologizing, always trying to show she cared. For a while, I existed in a state of suspended animation, unsure if I was punishing her or punishing myself. One late night, I found myself checking my own social media profile. I hadn't posted anything in a long time. My last photo was a smiling family portrait. The four of us, arms around each other, the golden retriever, the perfect yard. The caption read, #family first, #blessed. The memory of that day made my stomach twist. I clicked on the picture, staring at my own face, the broad smile, the confident posture. I hardly recognized that man. In the reflection of the laptop screen, I caught a glimpse of my face now, the lines of stress etched into my forehead, the hollowness around my eyes. Who am I? I whispered to the empty room. Am I a hero who defended his home, or a coward who let rage destroy everything? My emotions churned, a storm in my gut. I thought about Oliver's final moments, the way Sarah wept over his body. I thought about the children, innocent in all this, oblivious to the darkest truth of what had happened. I remembered how Bobo first alerted me, how that little detail, a dog's barking and a piece of foil, toppled my entire reality. For a second, I felt tears pricking the corners of my eyes. The old rule hammered in my brain. Men don't cry. Men handle business. So I blinked them away, clenching my jaw until the urge subsided. The pain, however, remained, a dull, throbbing ache that had become part of me. I closed the laptop, stared at the black screen. My own distorted reflection stared back. I was alone in the dark, the house silent, my wife presumably asleep upstairs, or maybe she too was awake, wrestling with regrets. But that was her struggle, not mine. I rubbed my fists over my eyes, remembering the heat of the blow, the stunned expression on Oliver's face. The moment it landed, something in me tore free, a primal satisfaction, a monstrous sense of vengeance. Now, in the aftermath, I felt only emptiness. Did I do the right thing? Did I even have a choice? The question circled, refusing to settle. Some nights I wanted to sink to my knees and scream. Other nights I wanted to hold Sarah, to bury myself in the old comfort of her arms. But whenever I tried to approach that line, I tasted the bitterness again. The memory of her body tangled with his in my house, the feeling that maybe I was never enough. And so I remain here, straddling the line between life and purgatory. I protect my kids, I wear a mask of calm in public, but inside I'm pinned to a hot iron plate, the heat licking my skull. I scroll past my old posts, the #family first illusions, the smiling pictures that now mock me. But I don't delete them. Perhaps I keep them as a reminder of what I used to believe in, or maybe as a cautionary tale. It's not your business, she once told me. But it was my business, and I made it my final duty to end that trespass the only way I knew how. Now I pay the price, day after day, trying to figure out whether I'm a man who stood up for himself or a brute who lashed out in blind fury. The truth is probably tangled in between. Whenever I look in the mirror, I see a question carved into my own eyes, a question no one else can answer. Am I hero or coward? I don't know if I'll ever find out. Maybe that's my punishment, to live with the uncertainty, to live with the knowledge that one choice can redefine you forever. And so I live, day by day, smiling for the kids, straining to exist under the same roof as Sarah, who gave me both the greatest joys of my life and the deepest wound I've ever felt. I sit here now, the house dark, the silence pressing in on me. My phone is on the table, the screensaver a photo of my children. I stare at it, then let my gaze drift to the old wedding photo on the wall. My reflection in the glass looks tired, worn, unrecognizable from the confident groom I once was. I close my eyes and focus on my heartbeat, strong and steady, even if my soul is anything but. Some part of me wonders if I'll ever truly heal. Another part wonders if I even deserve healing. Yet for all the anger and regret and confusion, one thing is certain. I can never go back to the man I was before. The illusions are shattered, replaced by this new reality where the best I can do is keep going, keep being a father, keep living, moment by moment, with the knowledge of what I've done and what was done to me. That's where it ends for now. Me, alone in the quiet, rummaging through the wreckage of a perfect life, asking myself the same question night after night. Hero or coward? Maybe both, maybe neither. But I can't run from it anymore. This is who I am. And that is the price I pay for letting rage guide my hand when everything else was stripped away.